Hello, Carol. It's wonderful to have you here. Very nice that you came to Berlin today. I'd like to start with some historical facts about your book because the main parts of the book are based on real events, and I just wanted to ask you to summarize them for us and to tell us what they mean for the book and how did you come across them.
Well, it's based on two basic historical events. The first one is the wreck of the Whaleship Essex, which is quite a famous maritime disaster from earlier part of that century. This was a whale ship that left the port of Nantucket in America, and in the Pacific it was sunk by a whale. And the men took to the seas in open boats, and they went through this incredible ordeal of survival. This really moved me quite a lot because I was struck by how young the boys were. They were very young boys. The crew was a very young crew. The youngest one, I think, was 14, and a lot of them were 16, 17, 18. I was, at the time, had teenage boys and was surrounded by a lot of teenagers, so it moved me and it really made me want to explore what these boys went through. And it came together with the second incident, which is a true story from Victorian London, around the Docklands area. There was Mr. Jamrack, who was this man who had a menagerie there. He used to import wild animals, and he supplied private collectors and zoos. And the true story of how one day a Bengal tiger, was walking down the street. It escaped as it was being brought up from the docks and walked off down the street. And everybody ran away apart from an 8-year-old boy who just walked up to it and stroked it on the nose. And the boy actually was rescued and didn't come to any harm. But again, I was fascinated by what this might do to a young child to be just walking along an ordinary street on an ordinary day and suddenly come face to face with a wild animal. So the two stories seemed to melt together in my head, and I kind of started working on this story of this young boy and how he'd looked into the eyes of a wild animal and became fascinated by his mortality, really, and by the wild side of life, and how this led him on to seek adventure when he became older. And that's he goes off to sea and gets, in fact, far more than he bargained for of the wild side. It becomes, in fact, far more than anybody could have hoped for. And so basically those two real things came together and I fictionalized it.
Well, with that, you just answered my second question. For the wonderful scene with the tiger, I just wanted to ask you what this means for Jeffy, because he says that the encounter with the tiger was somehow like a second birth for him, and it gave his life a completely new direction, which is, of course, in the encounter with Jamrek afterwards as well. And maybe you would like to add something to that?
It's partly that, it does have an effect on him, looking into this creature's eyes and seeing this wildness, but also it takes him in a completely different direction. If he'd never met the tiger, then he would never have met Jamrek. He would never have worked for Jamrek, because in the book Jamrek takes him under his wing and he goes to work for him in his, as his yard boy, looking after the animals and helping out. He would never have gone down that route in life. He could have gone a completely different direction. He would never have gone to sea, possibly. And then all the things that happened to him would never have happened. This is why quite early on in the book he says that he feels it's as if it's the fall of the dice, things that chance plays such an important part, and this chance that he happened to be there when the tiger was there and met the tiger took him in this direction. His life might have been completely different.
And you just mentioned, I think, the second boy, Tim. Tim becomes his best friend, and they get to know each other when they're working for Jamrek. And then later on, they go to sea together on the whaling ship, and their friendship has to pass a real hard exam. And I just wanted to ask you, what kind of friendship is this, and what do you think friendship can bear?
It's an ambiguous friendship, and I think a lot of friendships are. That when they're very young, there's huge rivalry between them. In a sense, they're both fatherless boys, because Jeffy has never known his father. Tim has a father, but his father he's lost his wits a long time ago, and he's there in person only, but he's not in any way playing the role of a father. So in a sense, they have this in common, and this draws them close. At the same time, they are rivals for various father figures throughout the book. The first one is Mr. Jamrak, who Tim's always worked for him from being small. And then when Jaffe comes along, here's this new favourite who comes along, because Jamrak feels very responsible for him and really does takes to him. And so there's always this undercurrent of rivalry. And then later on there's Dan, the character they go to sea with, who takes, he looks after them. He becomes another father figure. So as well as being a very, very close relationship, it's also, because Tim's always trying to pull rank and say, he's a year older, he's bigger, he's better looking, etc. Little Jaffe's always trying to run to keep up, as it were. And Tim can be spiteful. But then something I've seen with children generally, not just boys. They can be very cruel to one another. And then somehow they can still maintain a deep bond in spite of that. And this is what these boys do, and it carries them through to their teenage years, where they still have this relationship, which is kind of, But what their ordeal does for them, and what I wanted to explore, I think, was how when the cards are really down on the table and survival is at stake, and it's like, you really got your back up against the wall, this is when, instead of driving them apart, it brings them closer. And it not only challenges them, I think it does deepen their relationship, and it becomes, from being this kind of... It takes on a whole other dimension. It becomes more profound, I think, because they go through so much together, and they have to make such incredibly difficult moral choices for such young boys, that when they, on the other side of this relationship, what comes out of it is something that's wholly transformed, I think. Their whole relationship is seen in a different light. It's not just who's been mean to who, and who's the biggest, and so on and so on. There's something quite profound there, I think, which this awful experience they go through brings out for both of them.
And these difficult experiences are made on the sea, on the wide ocean, after they got shipwrecked. And I just wanted to know, why are you interested in seafaring or in people getting shipwrecked?
I didn't set out to write a sea story. It was the emotional story of what was going on with the boys. I mean, I was originally moved by the story of the Essex when I read about these. But there were boys who were very young, who'd grown up together and gone to sea together. They'd been childhood friends, and then they go to sea together. It starts out as a jolly adventure, and they did actually, in reality, these boys did go through the experience of being wrecked and then having to survive at sea in an open boat for weeks. This moved me a lot, and it came from the emotional story of what was going on between these two boys. It could have been something else. It didn't have to be the sea. It didn't have to be a shipwreck. It could have been another kind of challenge or another kind of disaster, I suppose. They could have been climbing a mountain, or they could have been anywhere. But it was this idea of them being absolutely up against the ultimate. Mm-hmm.
And did you have the intention to write a novel about friendship, really?
It grew. I mean, I don't tend to write a novel with any very clear intentions at the beginning. It tends to just simply come together out of various threads and strands that join up together, and then it reveals itself as I go along. So I started out knowing that it was going to be about boys at sea, and then it just took off from there. I didn't sit down at any point and think this is going to be about friendship, but inevitably that's how it ended up.
And if you go back to the beginning of the book, I think you described this wonderful atmosphere in London in the 19th century, the smell of the market at Watney Street and so on. And I was wondering if you think that literature can make a reader really feel like traveling through time and space.
It's an illusion, but hopefully if it's done well, it will give them that illusion. I mean, I hope so, if it works. That's what the writer's always trying to do, I think. They're trying to sort of do this kind of sleight of hand, It's obviously the whole thing is an illusion. It's words on a page. but you can hopefully make people think that that's what it would be like. Give them that it's like seeing a film or something. Mm-hmm.
Well, dangerous animals make their appearance in your novel: a tiger, a whale, a dragon, yes, and a Komodo dragon, and the animals in Jamrick's menagerie. And I just wanted to know, do you like wild animals?
I do. I love animals, and I love wild animals. I don't know if it's got anything to do with the fact that I grew up next door to a zoo. It could have something to do with it. I did it in Manchester, where I was born. We lived just across the road from Bellevue Zoo, which it was, looking back, this was in the 50s. Zoos weren't nice places in those days, but I used to love, my dad used to take us to see the animals quite regularly. It was on our doorstep, so we just used to go and visit the animals all the time. And we could hear them. We could hear them getting up in the morning. They used to wake, and we could hear them all getting up and kind of stretching their limbs and roaring, this great kind of collective sort of sighing and roaring and general animals waking sound. And I just loved going to see them. Yeah, all kinds of animals. Yes, I do like them.